Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. Hope y'all are doing well in your respective parts of the world, wherever you might be watching this from. I'm sitting here waiting to do the intro to the vlog I did the other day while I was sitting here waiting. And the vlog basically is me talking about a conversation I had with my mother-in-law the other day. And at one point might come across as somewhat arrogant, so I hope you can please forgive me for that when I say that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And the reason I kind of have to sidestep back on that is I think maybe 10 years ago when I heard someone say something like this, it actually kind of sounded somewhat smart. But just over a little bit of time and learning some stuff, I've just realized I've run the math myself, and I'm leaning more towards, this might be something that people say all the time, but really is one of those things that just, I think is completely wrong. And hopefully this video is not too controversial, and you'll see what my point when we get to it. So without any further ado, here y'all go. This is all the debris from years being piled up. We took a few poplars down a couple of years ago and just finally got it all cleaned up. Rented a little mini excavator, the little skid steer bobcat thing, and was able to get all this stuff pushed around and get in the right spot. The reason I'm rolling tape today is every once in a while you have those conversations with someone where you realize you gave them an idea that they didn't previously have before. And I had one of those conversations this week when I was talking to my mother-in-law, and she was talking about how she went and got her hair cut. And she was talking to the lady that owns this hair salon, and the lady said, business is good, we're not trying to grow business at all, which I thought was kind of a silly statement to make. They're already too busy as it is, and she's running radio ads, but she only does radio ads for the tax write-off. I told my mother-in-law, I was like, that is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And she was like, oh? And the reason that, just from a financial standpoint, doesn't make a lick of sense. Okay. It's because this lady is literally trading dollars to pick up quarters, right? So some people will say that in the when it comes to owning a home, oh, you have to own a home for the tax write-off. Well, it's like, no, that's not why you own a home. You own a home because you want to own a home, and you want home ownership. There's various reasons to own a home. And when people say something like, oh, you need to buy a house so you can have the tax write-off, you need to run away, because that person has no economic or financial understanding. And educated people say stuff like this. It's not just low class or working class people. Like, people that go to college never learned that important lesson, that you don't do something for a tax write-off. I know I might be like just destroying some of your guys' education situations right now. Ooh, here we go. You might be getting going on this fire. Because it never makes sense to pay someone $1 so that you can save a quarter somewhere else. It doesn't make sense to pay for advertising. So let's say she paid $1,000. It doesn't make sense to pay $1,000 for advertising just so you don't have to pay the government $250. Does that make sense? I mean, that's what we're talking about. This lady is literally giving up $750 out of her pocket so she doesn't have to pay the government $250. Or, well, she's giving up $1,000, but the net result is $750 in loss. And so that's just something you have to be aware of when you're trying to sound smart. And people say this kind of stuff to sound smart, but really you're not looking smart at all to anyone who has even a little bit of understanding about how finances work or economics. The funny part of this story was the person she was advertising with was actually a radio station owned by our state college in our town. And so she said, well, I'm supporting the college, was, like the justification. Well, like I'm spending $1,000 on radio advertising, so I don't have to pay the government $250 in taxes, which, if you break that down, even that sounds silly, because if you spend $1,000 to a state college, you're paying the state government $1,000, so you don't have to spend $250 in federal taxes. So once again, we're going backwards here. We're trading dollars for quarters. And if I didn't feel like this wasn't like widespread, what classifies as widespread common sense, which really isn't common sense, or maybe it is common sense, but it's not good sense, I wouldn't be making this video right now. But the fact is, it's just not good financial sense. I don't know if this fire's gonna take off. It might be too early. We still have a little too much dew on it. All right, bingo, we got this fire going.